So I teach spiritual philosophy. I do other stuff as well, but I teach spiritual philosophy. And today I'm going to share a sort of mini workshop, because this is actually taken from a longer workshop that's about 90 minutes to 2 hours usually. But I wanted to share it because I think it's particularly relevant for the current time, in particular today. Today is the Kisima Livestream Festival, I guess. And of course, Kisima, they unfortunately, sadly, had to cancel their, in-person festival, or not cancel it, but postpone it till October because of the rising number of COVID cases. And so this talk is going to talk a little bit about also COVID and what it really means and how it plays into everything. But first, spiritual philosophy, basic definition. Spiritual actually refers to the non-physical, and philosophy, break it down into two: philo, love of, Sophie, wisdom. Okay, so I basically share, teach, engage in, discuss with people about the wisdom of the spiritual plane. So basically, I'm just going to actually share a screen now. Okay, so can you see that? Can everybody see that? Yes?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I don't know if I should put it on like that. Okay, so this is the title of the workshop, Conscious Transformation in the Time of Corona. But basically, okay, this is not letting me, here we go. This is how you do it. Okay, so if you see, you can't, this is a bit more complicated. This is a diagram about, it's basically ancient cosmology. But basically, all you need to really know is that there are two planes. There is a spiritual plane, there's a non-physical plane, and then there's a physical plane. Okay, so air, space, vacuum, these are still the physical plane. The spiritual plane is almost behind and embedded into the physical plane. And basically, the spiritual plane can be seen in the diagram as the I, as the awareness. And the ancient cosmology, the Indian cosmology in particular, explains how the spiritual plane and the physical plane are connected. Because, and how they explain it is that there was consciousness, there's always been consciousness, there's never been nothing. So if we go back to before the Big Bang, everybody asks what was there before the Big Bang, and they were like, nothing. But the Indian cosmology says you can't have something from nothing. It's not possible, right? So what existed before the physical existed was basically conscious potential, okay? And that consciousness and conscious has always been there. It is not even an entity, you can't really describe it that, but it operates in the plane of infinity. So it's always been there, it never ends, it never started, it doesn't stop. And this consciousness had kind of a focused thought, what we would call a thought. And this thought was basically vibration, as you can see. It created a vibrational frequency. And as the vibrational frequency expanded to get bigger and bigger and bigger, this thought transformed into sound. And that sound, of course, was the Om sound. That was the first sound. And interestingly, this really aligns with Genesis in the Bible, because Genesis in the Bible says what? That in the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was God, and God was in the Word. And after this sound, as the vibrational frequency of the sound got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, it split into two, which was matter and force. And the projection of force onto matter is basically life. Yeah. So it explains how the spiritual manifested or created the physical. So everything in physical creation is a result of a conscious thought, right? Now, interestingly, the Bible also talks about, I think it's also in Genesis. Yeah, it is in Genesis. Let us make man in our image and our likeness, and then let them have dominion over them, over all the animals and birds and plants and stuff. So when he was talking about image, you could actually take the word and understand it as characteristics, okay? And to function like. When you talk about likeness, it's like to function like. So basically, human beings are conscious beings, and they have this potential to create. It's not only humans, actually, but anyways. So we are basically, if you go back to the origin of all creation, we are all basically conscious vibration. And we're all manifestations of that conscious vibration as well. So we are both consciousness and a manifestation of consciousness at the same time. It's like we are the dancer and the dance. You can't separate the two. So there's a stream of reality that flows through all life, all physical reality. Okay? And we can actually analyze the world. So we're just looking at the arrow at the moment on the screen. So there's a stream of consciousness that flows through all reality. And we can analyze what is happening in this stream of consciousness at two levels. We can analyze it on a physical level, which we do all the time. And then we can analyze it on a spiritual level. So I come from a background of also political analysis. But actually, you can actually do the very same thing when you look at the spiritual plane. So when you're doing a physical analysis, usually you're looking at cause and effect in the physical world. So in terms of political analysis, for example, you may ask, why is this happening? Why is there corruption? How does the system of corruption work, and how do we address it, and so on and so on. But when you're doing spiritual analysis, what you want to do is you really want to understand what is the purpose of the current state, the current flow of reality. What is the purpose of the current state of this stream of consciousness? Okay, and how should we engage with it? Right? So we come now to where we are today. Where we are today, everybody's going to ask, is the world getting worse? Is the world getting better? Fundamental, actually spiritual question. What direction is the world going? Actually, in the Hindu system, you have three states, not two. You have the state of creation, which is represented by Brahma. You have the state of preservation or sustenance of that creation, which is Vishnu. And then you have the state of destruction, which is Shiva. So you don't have two states, you have three actually. And of course, they all flow into each other, don't they? Like they're a cycle. If you look at many religions, many traditions, many of them, they have a prophetic part of the tradition of the knowledge of the discourse. And the prophetic part of the discourse is really about end of the world, apocalypse, or end of the age, end of an age. I'm of the opinion that it's actually, there is no such thing as apocalypse. There is only apocalypse of one age and beginning of the new, because energy is never created or destroyed. It's only changing shape, right? So Eckhart Tolle, when he was asked this question about 10 years ago, is the world getting better or is it getting worse fundamentally? He said, it's doing both at the same time. So if you see, you could almost imagine it like an X, right? Where the old age is going downwards, declining, and there's a coming in of a new age. So creation of a new, destruction of the old. And that's why we're at a very tumultuous time, a time that has, I mean, almost fits in with what Revelation calls the apocalypse. You know, fire and floods and swarms of locusts and plagues, diseases, pandemics, things like that, you know. And COVID is sitting, you know, probably somewhere around just at the after this cross has happened, or around the time of the cross, you know, where the new age is starting to come in and the old age is going out. And definitely, if you look in the physical world, coronavirus has created huge change, huge shift in the way we think, in the way of thinking about ourselves, in the way we are living, and the way we are now working and doing things in the world. So we're definitely in a time of transformation. Okay. Now, there's also been some astrological ideas about this transition from one age to the other around this time. So in December, there was this astrological event, the Great Conjunction, and many of the astrologers also spoke about the shifting of the ages from an old order to a new order, and that we were moving from, and they spoke in terms of moving from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. So when we look at what this means, we're moving from a time, the old age was, and the age of Pisces was considered to be a time of order, authority, and structure. And now in new age, we're moving to creativity, freedom, and collaborative leadership. It's a different system to authority, okay? So instead of order, we have creativity. Instead of authority, we have collaborative leadership. And instead of structure, we have freedom. And already just the fact that we're all working from home is a lot to do with the shift towards freedom. And Kisima, for example, is basically a collaborative event. It's an event of different leaders, thought leaders, spiritual leaders. We're all leaders in our own way, coming together to collaborate, to create something. So when you put together freedom, creativity, and collaboration, you could actually, when you put those three things together, what you actually are talking about is another way of being, which is flow. So we have been taught, all of us are adults here, so we've really been taught about perseverance, about determination, about commitment, about grit, about doing things, a very active way of engaging in the world. We have to make things happen, you know. But what coronavirus has come and has almost knocked us over, if you look at the little men on the screen, one of them is kind of bowled over, is teaching you something else. It's no longer teaching you to make things happen, because so much the external forces are so strong. They have so much let's say, agency over what is possible and what's not possible, that we are now being taught a different process of being. And that process we can call the yin process, a process of acceptance and surrender. So if you look at the three little men, three states, first guy is fighting. He's fighting the flow of life. He's like, no, I don't want this to happen like this. It shouldn't happen like this. I'm not letting go of this, etc., etc. The second guy has just been bowled over, or girl, let's say girl, has been bowled over. Because of course the flow of life is so powerful, you can't really fight it. And then the third is in a state of surrender. Although I couldn't find a bowing surrender, because that's actually, when you talk about yin surrender, you're not talking about giving up. You're talking about submitting, which is different than giving. Submitting is different than giving up. And if you submit, then what happens is you start dancing with the music. You're not fighting reality. You're dancing, the reality becomes the music to which you dance to. So, and that is that's actually why the dancer is a sacred symbol in the Indian tradition. So how do we use yin processes? Okay. So so the workshop that I normally teach, it actually goes through all of these, but that takes forever. And there are exercises you can do to learn how you can start practicing yin, if indeed you'd like to, so, get to a flow state. But today, obviously, we're not going to have time for all of this, so we'll do a shorter version. But what the yin processes can allow you to do is they help you to create in alignment with the greater flow of reality, okay? And to create from the inside out. So not to do, but actually to create. And you want to be using these kind of techniques. So these are all spiritual processes: asking, receiving, letting go. You can do spiritual navigation. You can trusting, learning how to trust, allowing, very difficult for me, I find very difficult personally, surrendering, and then you can enter the flow state. So I think we're just going to spend a little time on the first part today. I'm going to take you through a little exercise in asking. And then I can talk you through, I'll come back to this and talk you through what the other ones are. So what's really happened to a lot of people, not to everybody, but with COVID, has been change in external circumstances. And sometimes those changes have knocked people off their feet. But anytime, it doesn't have to be only now if you are facing challenging times, but in any time in your life that you feel challenged, you start with asking a deep question about the challenge. And so basically, if we go back to this first diagram here, where we can see that the physical world is just a manifestation of the spiritual world. And if we understand that matter and force are simply different vibrational frequencies of energy, and we are just a combination of matter and force, then we are pure consciousness. So when we ask deep questions, we ask them deeply, and we ask them to the conscious energy that is in our cells and that is in all cells around us. And that's basically what scientists will say communicating with the quantum field. So basically, interestingly enough, quantum physicists really now understand that everything in reality is basically waves of potential. Nothing actually exists until we consciously observe it to exist. And what is contained in the quantum field of possibility is basically waves of information. So when we ask deep questions deeply, we're basically communicating with the quantum field of information, which is basically superconscious information, which is all knowing. It's basically, in the Indian tradition, they call it Ishvar, okay? It's all knowing, it's all information, all knowledge that is out there, and it transcends time and space. So you can basically ask and find the answer to anything.
Hi. NEHA has frozen for me. Is that true for others?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's okay. Let me just check in with her. See what happened there. I just sent her a little message. Let's see what happens.
Hi, sorry. We had a power cut here.
Welcome back.
Okay, so can you still see my screen?
No.
Okay, hold on, let me share it again. So yeah, I don't even know what I was saying. Well, I had to just divert to set up mobile data anyways. So what we're talking about, we're talking about science and the quantum field and information. So yeah, basically all scientific discovery happened through insight. It didn't happen through rational thinking. So there was a whole bunch of rational thinking and work that had to be done. But then there was a relaxation of the mind and an opening and insight. So that's like how, like, you know, when Newton saw the apple, or the other guy, is it Fleming, who discovered Eureka or something in the bath, you know? Anyway, it's my science, it's a bit rusty. But basically that's how you, so I'm going to show you, so in this time of change, okay, you're going to be transformed, whether you like it or not. I mean, every experience is transforming you, but of course, intense experience is going to transform you. So the reason why this workshop is called Conscious Transformation is because you actually have the ability to take that transformation into your own hands and intentionally go through the process of transformation. And what's the advantage of that? It's like basically being hit or engaging with a fist. It's a different process. And conscious transformation is going to allow you to basically emerge with more knowledge about yourself, about consciousness, and about transformation itself. And I think also it actually allows you to emerge more powerfully, because you're investing a lot of conscious energy into the process, you know? So anyways, when you're at a crossroad, when you're going through change, when the flow of life has hit you in the face, you can always ask a deep question. So today I'm going to take you through a very small meditation that can help you understand how to ask these questions. So just to let you know that there's two things that can happen when you do this practice. The first is that you can wait and try to hear an answer. Okay. The second is that you can just let the question go out into the quantum field of information, and the answers, the information will come back to you, and we'll talk about that after this, right? How you can capture that information. So I'm going to give about maybe 3 minutes for this practice. Now, what is a deep question? What is the difference between a deep question and a normal question? A deep question is something that you're energetically grappling with, okay? So a deep question could be something like, why did this happen? Or what is the purpose of this change? Or even deeper, what is my purpose? Or What is it that you want me to express? What is the nature of reality? What is the nature of abundance? All of those kind of very, very deep questions about life, okay? So if you are willing participants, you're welcome to close your eyes right now. And I just want you guys to take a few deep inhales. So we can inhale. And we can exhale. Inhale. Exhale. One more time. Inhale. Exhale. Now I just want you to take your awareness to your heart center, which is an energetic center between your chest bones, between your rib cage, between your left breast and your right breast. And just start to just focus on that area. And now I want you to use the energy in that area to ask whatever it is that you want to ask. Try to express that question as much as possible from that space, rather than expressing it from your mouth. And just focus on that question. Focus on that question until you feel you've fully expressed it out. I'm going to give you another 30 seconds or a minute if you'd like to wait to see if you get a response or not. If you don't feel like waiting, you can just open your eyes. We'll give everybody else a chance. Okay, when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Sometimes when you do that exercise, a question comes out that you're not expecting. So you could, that's also be open to that, because this process of asking through the energy center rather than through the mind, it can help you understand yourself deeper also. So your heart center is really the strongest, it's the access to the jiva, the soul, the individual soul. Okay, they call it the seat of the soul. It's almost like, you know, if the bottle is the soul, this is kind of, the heart is the, it's a bottle open part where you can actually access the soul, you know. So that is where you get, that's where all truth is. That is where your truth is, and all truth can be accessed. So yeah, anytime, and basically, essentially, that is what you use when you pray. And what we did is basically a form of prayer, although some people are not comfortable with that word, which is totally fine. You don't ever need to use that word if you're not comfortable with it. But it's basically using the conscious, it's expressing consciousness. And when you express consciousness, of course, because it's all connected in this field, consciousness, of course, vibrates, resonates, and returns the wave. So what happens when you ask deep questions is that you're going to get answers to your question. So how do you start to receive questions, the answers to the questions? One thing you do is you have to be open. Okay, so being open means, number one, pay attention now. Pay attention to, so for, I mean, in this, and when I say pay attention, it means, look around your physical reality, because the spiritual plane consciousness operates in the physical realm as well, right? So it's embedded in the physical realm. Everything physical has a spark of consciousness in it. Every cell has consciousness in it, you know? So pay attention to your physical reality, because answers can come through the physical reality in the form of signboards, advertisements, texts in a book, somebody tells you something, a matatu sign, it could be anywhere. And when you pay attention, you will start to see the answers, because what will happen is the energy center will start to hook onto, okay, that was the similar vibration of my expression. So it will start to pick up on that, on what actually, and that's why I say it's that's why we use the word resonate, because it's about the resonance of frequency. Okay. The second is to look around, engage other people. So if you've asked a question, then you can also ask other people this question. Other people are also manifestations of consciousness and pure consciousness. Ask their opinion. You know, you can also actively engage with reality to ask these questions in reality, in the physical reality. And then, of course, the third thing is very simple. You can just do Google searches. So search, because it will search and then click on things, or like if you're in a library, for example, go to the books that resonate with you, click on the articles that resonate with you, type in the words that resonate with you. You can also search for answers this way. So, and you follow, what you want to do is you want to follow resonance. And that's how you can receive, by following resonance. So essentially, you have now, as of this exercise, begun a journey in conscious transformation, because you have intentionally engaged in change, because the beginning of change is a question. And the answer that comes is a new way of living, always. As you receive the answer, you will integrate the answer, not just know it intellectually. So when I say integrate an answer, it's like, you know, I'm sure we've all had friends. I think, are we all women here? Let's just say that we're all women here. Have you ever had a friend who's dating a guy or somebody that's dating somebody who's awful? And everybody's like, what is she doing with him? Why is she dating him, you know? But you try to say it sensitively, and over the years, and people have tried to tell her, and she just still insists on dating this person and putting herself in situations that are undermining her value, dignity, worth, etc. And then one day, this girl's like, oh, I've broken up with him. And I'm like, what happened? And she's like, oh, something, or somebody told me, or I read in a book. And I'm like, oh my God, I've been saying the same thing for years. Because basically, knowing something here is different from integrating it here. So the integration is what Oprah calls the aha moment. The moment when you realize your boyfriend is a dick, the dick moment, maybe you could call it. Let me just, I don't know if you're allowed to say that, but anyway, sorry, I went off a little bit. But the point is, the integration is when you have a realization, okay? It's not just intellectual. So what happens if there's, I mean, there are, we can actually go back to some of the other processes, okay? So asking, receiving, there's other processes that you can incorporate into conscious transformation. And we're not going to have time to go and do exercises in all of them. But what happens when you get into, when you use all those techniques and you get into flow state? Okay? What happens when you consciously transform is you start to enter the realm of creativity. So the flow state, and that's why all creativity is a state of flow. You get into a state of flow. You now transcend time and space. That's why when you do something you really, really love, you don't know how much time has passed sometimes. It can be hours and you think it's just like 20 minutes. You know, when you get into flow state, it's not that you lose sense of time, it's that you transcend time. So you enter the realm of creativity. So whatever you start doing now, for example, when you get closer and closer to operating in a flow state, you'll be extremely creative. You'll be creative in your conversations, you'll be creative in your cooking, you'll be creative in the way you host a party, in the way you do your work. Everything will have that extra creativity. And what does creativity go hand in hand with? Creativity goes hand in hand with energy. When you are being creative, you are energized. You don't get tired. So when something is draining you, you're not using a creative state. Because whenever you do something you really, really love, if you notice, I mean, you might sleep well at night, but you won't be drained. You'll be energized. You'll be still high. And at the end of the creative process, always there's a high. There may be a need for relaxation, but there's still a high. So you'll notice that you'll have more energy. More energy will obviously mean that you're now going to align with the vibration of abundance. Because what is abundance? Abundance is infinite energy. So creativity creates more energy, more energy, it can be more creative, creativity creates more energy, you get into the cycle of abundance. That's really what abundance is. It's a waterfall of energy, and it never stops flowing. And when there is abundance, of course, there is sharing, right? So if you think of yourself, when you get into a flow state, you become like an energetic waterfall. Now you start to share that flow with everybody else around you. That energy is contagious. I mean, we know that we emit energy fields of, can go hundreds of meters, I think they say, and we know that also consciousness it co-locates everywhere. So we also know that we're connected to everything in the universe. So this automatically, just the fact that you are more abundant, you're more creative, you're more energetic, you're more abundant, it is going to be shared, whether you intentionally share it or not. And the more that you share it, the more that it's shared, the more it touches others, the more they are affected by it, then they get more and more in tune with this state of creative, energetic, abundant sharing. And that's the power of the flow state. So the flow state is not simply yin. The reason why I've talked mainly about yin is because the world has already been teaching us yang. And my spiritual analysis, and of course, each of you is going to have your own spiritual analysis about the world today and the situation we're in, and that's rightly so. There's no one right, because we all have a different set of eyes to see a different part of the picture, right? But the reason why I've talked about yin today is because we've been learning yang process so much, which is the doing, the active, being active, going forth, right? But what happens, so we're now in the time of the world where we're being taught yin. to accept, to be rather than to do, to create from being. Okay, to learn to surrender, to flow. What happens when you combine yin and yang? Because ultimately, you need both, right? Reality is made up of two always, right? So when you have strength, think about it. If you have strength, and you're also allowing, what happens? Look at that, right? Strength, you need strength, but then you're allowing. You're opening, right? You're surrendering. You start to unfold. You're no longer climbing the ladder of achievement and ambition. Now you start to unfold your unique expression of the divine, because each of us is a completely unique, you could say, flower. Each of us has a unique scent, a unique perfume, unique colors, unique shapes, textures, petals. We all have it's all, and that perfume is actually, you could call it our superpower. What we were created to express. So I could say that Kisima, of course, it is a collective expression, but it is also the expression of Heather, because this was Heather's dream, and she is unfolding it, right? But if you're only doing and not also allowing, then, you know, it's not as beautiful, basically. So the combination of yin and yang creates beauty in the world. And the outcome of this is that you experience joy and you experience flow. And we all know that those are awesome things to experience. Then each act that you do is truth, is an embodiment of truth. And we live with grace. We know all flowers are graceful. When you combine yin and yang, of course you will have grace. Grace is part of that, because it is harmony of the two opposites. And you will be at peace, and you will be in a state of love. Yeah. So this is the outcome of living in flow, with flow and in flow. Now, of course, I wish we could all be like this all the time, but it's a practice, and it's not a linear practice. It's not a practice where you're like, oh, I'm better today, and I'm better today, I'm better today. No, our consciousness, our external reality, everything's changing all the time. So it's going to be different on different days. But if you use the practices here to balance the yang that we've already, I think, we're quite strong at, most people are, then you can enter the flow state more easily, more and more and more in your life. And now things will start to fall away from you, and you will start to create your new life. But now you will be doing it consciously, intentionally. You'll not just be thrown about by the power of the stream of consciousness. So thank you very much. That is what I have for you today. I wanted to share that. These are my contacts if you're interested, if you need to get in touch about anything, if you have any questions.